The president just called it treason to say America isn't winning a war most Americans didn't know we were fighting. On May 1st, at the Village's retirement community in Florida, Donald Trump told the crowd that anyone claiming the U.S. isn't winning in Iran is committing an act of treason. Not wrong. Not unpatriotic. Treason. The crime that carries the death penalty. Here's what makes this moment different from every other time Trump has thrown around the word. The timing wasn't random. May 1st was the exact day a 50-year-old law required him to get congressional approval to continue the war with Iran. The War Powers Act gives the president 60 days to fight without Congress. After that, lawmakers must vote to authorize it. Trump notified Congress on March 2 that hostilities began when Iran blocked the Strait of Hormuz on February 28. 60 days later, he was supposed to come to Capitol Hill, hat in hand, and ask permission to keep going. Instead, he declared the war over. In a letter to Congress, Trump wrote that hostilities have terminated because of a ceasefire he himself has extended 3 times because peace talks keep stalling. By his logic, a pause in fighting erases the 60 days that already happened. Constitutional scholars called this absurd. The War Powers Act doesn't say a ceasefire resets the clock. It says hostilities, and those hostilities killed people, destroyed infrastructure, and blockaded one of the world's most critical oil choke points for 5 weeks before any pause was announced. But if Trump can redefine when a war counts as a war, he can fight indefinitely without a vote. No oversight. No debate. No accountability. And if you object, that's treason. The Constitution defines treason in Article 3, Section 3 with unusual precision. The founders were terrified of kings who labeled dissent as betrayal, so they wrote the only crime they bothered to define into the document itself. Treason is levying war against the United States or giving aid and comfort to its enemies. It requires 2 witnesses to the same overt act or a confession in open court. Criticizing the president's war strategy is not in there. Saying we're losing is not in there. Reporting inconvenient facts is not in there. Trump knows this. He's accused Barack Obama of treason. He's accused journalists of treason. He's accused a 4-star general of treason. The word has no meaning anymore, except as a threat. The war itself barely registers with the American public. It started over oil routes and escalated into airstrikes, a naval blockade, and at least 5 weeks of open combat before the first ceasefire. Trump has given conflicting timelines for when it will end, called the U.S. military like pirates, and celebrated taking control of shipping lanes. Coverage has been sporadic. The Village's crowd cheered when Trump said critics were treasonous. No one asked what criticism he meant. No one asked what the war was even about anymore. A Pew poll from mid-April found that only 38% of Americans could correctly identify what triggered the conflict. The war is invisible until the president needs it to be visible enough to justify calling dissent a capital crime. Here's the mechanism that should scare you. Trump isn't just avoiding Congress. He's establishing that avoiding Congress is legal because he can declare a war over while simultaneously calling it treasonous to say we're not winning it. Both things can't be true. If the war is over, there's nothing to win. If we're winning, the war isn't over. The contradiction is the point. It means the war exists in whatever form is most useful at any given moment. Need to bypass the War Powers Act? The war is over. Need to silence critics? The war is ongoing and we're winning. Need to justify another airstrike? The ceasefire was violated. The war becomes an ink blot, and reality becomes whatever the president says it is when he says it. This isn't the first time an American president has stretched war powers past the breaking point. But it's the first time one has done it while threatening his own citizens with execution for doubting him. The word treason is in the Constitution for a reason. It was supposed to be so narrow, so hard to prove, that no leader could wield it as a weapon. Trump just turned it into one anyway. And the scariest part? Most people didn't even notice the war was happening. New York Congressman Pat Ryan, who served in Iraq with Pete Hegseth 20 years ago, confronted Hegseth using direct quotes from soldiers who reported their U.S. base lacked adequate defenses against Iranian counterattacks. The soldiers testified that insufficient equipment contributed to casualties at their station. Ryan presented this testimony during what appears to be a confirmation or oversight hearing, creating a public clash between the two veterans over battlefield accountability. The testimony directly challenges Hegseth's leadership record and raises questions about base security decisions that may have cost American lives. This confrontation reflects broader scrutiny of military leadership accountability and the adequacy of force protection measures in Middle East deployments where Iranian-backed threats remain active.